We're ready. So, what I did is I started on the pie chart, and when I took the pretest, I said, I don't know, because last fall they decided to be really fun and switch everything around on the pie chart. So all the previous note sheets I had were in a different order than the pie chart was. So between me and my helper, we're trying to go back through the pie charts and rearrange everything so it's in the same order you're going to see it. So, first topic that came up was writing expressions using exponents. It says rewrite 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 using an exponent. So this number 2 that we have written down is called the base. The base is 2. The exponent is how many times you're going to take it times itself. We have it 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So 2 to, gosh, that doesn't want to write like I want it. That 4 looks really big now. 2 to the 4th power is how we're going to write that using an exponent. So number 2, we have 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. How would you write that using an exponent?
7 to the 5th?
7 to the 5th power. 7 is the base, 5 is the exponent. So, number 3, we got 3 times itself a whole lot of times.
So would I be jumping ahead if I asked, then how do we get the answer to that? Would we times 7 times 5?
Nope, we take 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 times 7.
Oh,
But I'll tell you an easier way in a minute when we get
Okay.
down to those ones.
Okay.
Yes, you're
That's-
jumping ahead.
I'm jumping ahead.
That's okay though. So, how am I going to write number 3 using an exponent?
3 to the 7th.
3 to the 7th power. 3 is called the base, and the 7 is your exponent. So now we're going to evaluate expressions that have exponents. So, 12 squared, what that really means is that you're doing 12 times 12. If you bought one of those calculators from the bookstore, grab that out of your pile of stuff. Oh, except for I probably have to find Rose one. Hopefully there's one in my bag.
The bookstore was closed.
Oh, there it is. She left out. Now, there are a number of different ways I could do 12 squared on my calculator. I could do 12 times 12. There is a shortcut here. There's an x to the 2nd power. You can put 12 and hit that button. It has the x squared on it. Or for any exponent, you can use what's called the caret key. The caret key looks like that up arrow. It's right next to the x squared. If you put in 12 caret 2 and hit equals, that's the same thing as doing 12 squared. So if you do 12 squared, you get, I hid my marker. 12 times 12, or 12 squared is 144. All right. So obviously, once we get a higher exponent, I really wouldn't want to have to punch in 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. That'd take me a long time, right? So, since there isn't a shortcut button on our calculator, we just have to use the caret key on that one. So we're going to type in 2 caret 5 and hit equals. If you do 2 caret 5 and hit equals, what do you end up with?
What's a carrot?
It's the one that looks like a little up arrow. Oh, yeah, you probably don't. You have to use the Y to the X button on there. However, you will not be able to use that on your final.
No, I'm not
but
going to. I'll be using one when the bookstore opens.
So, yes, you have to use the X, Y to the X, or X to the Y, whichever order that was. So try 2, and then that one, and then 5. See there, with the caret.
Oh.
And then use might make you close that parenthesis, and then hit equals. There's the 32. So, yes, 2 to the 5th power is 32. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, and 16 times 2 is 32. If I really had to do it the long way without my calculator. So, number 6 says we're going to evaluate 3 to the 4th power. 3 to the 4th power. If you did 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, or used your calculator and did 3 caret 4, you come up with I heard somebody say it. 81. So on your calculator, if you have one from the bookstore, there is a squared key, there is a cubed key, and there's also the caret key that you can use for any exponent that you want to put in there. Even negative ones when we get to those. Number 7 says, write all the factors of 26. Factors, those are those values that you multiply times each other to get that value. They usually come in what's called a factor pair. One of my factor pairs always starts with 1 times my number. So 1 times 26 is one of the factor pairs of 26. It's another way we could get 26. 2 times 13. 3 won't work, 4 doesn't work, 5 doesn't work, and so forth. And so those are all of my factors of 26. Now on Alex, do you have to put them in order? No, you don't. You just have to have all of the numbers listed and no extra ones. So usually I just write them down in my factor pairs. So if I'm going to write the factors of 18, what's one of my factor pairs for 18? 1 times 18. 2 times 9. There's another one. 3 times 6. So if you really wanted to rearrange them and put them in order, you certainly could, but you don't have to. You just have to get them all in there. Those are all my factors of 18. How about if I'm doing factors of 22? 1 times 22. You know 1's going to work on every one of them. And 2 times 11. Any more? Nope, that's it. So 1 times 22 and 2 times 11. Those are my factors.
And factors are anything that can be divided into that number? Is that?
Sort of, yes.
Okay.
So factors are the numbers you multiply together to get that answer, but multiplying and dividing are inverses of each other. So yes. Just like when you talk about adding and subtracting with negative numbers. Yes. Prime numbers. Prime numbers are those numbers who only have one factor pair, 1 and itself. Composite numbers, which they don't talk about, are your other numbers that have more than one pair of numbers. So like 22 was a composite number because it had 1 and 22 and 2 and 11. So if I'm looking at my prime numbers, I think about my factor pairs. 2, the only way to get 2 is 1 times 2. Oh yeah, that's prime because that's the only way I could do that. 5. I can do 1 times 5. There's no other way to get 5. That is a prime number. But 12, I could do 1 times 12. I could do 2 times 6. I could do 3 times 4. That is a composite number, not a prime number, because it has more than one pair of factors. 14, 1 times 14, 2 times 7. Again, that's a composite number. It's got more than one pair of factors. 27, 1 times 27, 3 times 9, not prime. 29, however, there's only one way to get 29. 1 times 29. 2, by the way, is your smallest prime number. Negative numbers aren't going to be counted in with your prime numbers. 0 has a whole lot of factor pairs because I can take 0 times anything and get 0. 0 times 1, 0 times 2, 0 times 3. And 1 they don't count as a prime number because in its factor pair it's just 1 times 1, which is the same number. It's not 2 different numbers. So technically they don't count that as a prime number. So 2 is your smallest prime number, and then you go from there and see if it has any other factors other than 1 in itself. So, looking at that list, which numbers are prime? 2 is prime. It only is 1 times 2. 11.
17.
And 17. and that'd be it. 2 is also your only even prime number, so anything that's an even number is divisible by 2, and so therefore you can eliminate those right away. And number 12, again, want you to check the prime numbers, which ones are prime there. 2 and 11. And all the rest are divisible by something other than 1 in itself, right?
17 is?
17 is prime. You're on the other one.
My bad.
Come on, Rose.
My bad.
I know you're not working on Alex because you can't get in there yet. So, they talk about prime factorization. Prime factorization is to write out a number in factored form, which means you're saying something times something times something times something, using only prime numbers. Probably most of you, if you did prime factorization, did it using a factor tree. There are other ways to do prime factorization, but factor trees are probably the easiest way. What you do is you pick out one pair of factors other than 1 in itself to get that number. What's a pair of factors for 24? What times what is 24?
2 times 12.
2 times 12. Then you say, okay, is this number a prime number? 2 is a prime number. I circle it because I know that's going to be part of my answer and I can't do anything with 2. Is 12 a prime number? No. So I'm going to divide 12 up again. That's why they call it a tree, because we're making a whole bunch of branches. So then I factor 12. What times what is 12? 2 times 6. 2 is a prime number. 6 is not. I can factor that again. 2 times 3. 2 is prime, 3 is prime. So my prime factorization is going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. If you grab your calculator and you do 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 and hit equals, what do you suppose it's going to give you?
24.
24, exactly. So, when it write as a product of prime factors, all of those are prime numbers, and if I multiply them all together, I get 24 for my answer.
That was easy.
Well, good.
Huh.
So now we're going to do 98 then. 98. I want to write it as the product of prime factors. What times what gives me 98? 2 times 49. We know it's an even number, so for sure 2 is going to work, right? 2 is a prime number. 49. Can we factor 49? Yeah. 7 times 7, right? Is 7 a prime number? Yes, it is, because it's only pair of factors is 1 times 7. There's no other way to break it down, right? So we're stuck right there. 2 times 7 times 7, exactly. So now do 40 on your paper. I'm going to give you a minute or so. So 40, what'd you come up with?
2 times 2 times 2 times 5.
2 times 2 times 2 times 5. Everybody get that? All right, then we must know what we're doing. Would you tell me if you didn't? Some of you might. Next thing that popped up with on my pie chart when I went on there was the least common multiple. Multiple, you think of the word multiply. So when I think of the multiples of 3, I have 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. So 3, 6, 9, 12, and so forth and so on. When I'm doing the least common multiple, they're going to tell me that I want to do the multiples of my numbers. But I could make it really long and a whole lot of work. A shortcut is to start with your multiples of your bigger number. I'm going to start with 8, and I'm going to say, okay, does 6 divide into 8? No, it doesn't, so they don't have a common multiple. So then I do 8 times 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Does 6 divide into 16 evenly? Nope. So I do 8 times 3. 8 times 3 is 24. Does 6 divide into 24 evenly? Yes, it does. So 24 is your least common multiple. Otherwise, they would have you list all the multiples of 8, the multiples of 6, until you found one in common, which is just extra work. But least common multiple is what we do when we find the common denominator to add fractions, which we'll get to on the next page probably. So if I want to do the least common multiple of 15 and 6, I'm going to start with the bigger number, 15. Does 6 go into 15? Nope. So the next multiple of 15 would be 30. Does 6 divide into 30? Yes, it does. 30 is going to be my least common multiple. Now some of these you probably just know by looking at them, but you know, we can do the process there. So go ahead on your paper, figure out what is the least common multiple of 4 and 10. 20. 4 divides into 20, 10 divides into 20, and that's the smallest number they both divide into, right? So least common multiple. Think of multiplying. I got bigger numbers.
Can we write that down again?
You can. You can write whatever notes on that paper you want to write. In fact, I would encourage you to do so because you can use those on your assessment. Equivalent fractions. So we have fractions. We have fractions that are proper fractions where the top is smaller than the bottom. We have improper fractions where the top is bigger than the bottom, and various forms of each. If I want to make an equivalent fraction, what I'm doing is I'm basically thinking, what times 7 gives me 28? Or dividing. 28 divided by 7 is 4, right? So if I take this bottom part times 4 to get 28, I also have to take the top part times 4. 6 times 4 is 24. So 6/7 is going to be equivalent to 24/28. Now on your calculator, just because you know we like to play with them and learn what we're doing, except for yours since you don't have one that has a fraction button yet, you have a little button that has ABC over here on the side. That's your fraction button. If you put the fraction that's not reduced down, which is this one, 24, hit the fraction button 28, and hit equals, your calculator is going to reduce it to lowest terms, so it should give you 6/7, so you can kind of check to say, does this look like I have the right equivalent fraction? Now this one they wrote the other way around, but that's okay. We know really that this is a smaller number. We got to make it the bigger number. What do we have to take times 9 to get 27? 3. So that means we're going to take the 7 on top, also times 3, which would be 21. So 7/9 is equivalent to 21/27.
Is it okay to do the cross multiply and then divide that by
You could. With these bigger numbers, that would be more work, but it would work. So on here, figure out on your paper there, 3/5 is equal to how many 25ths? What'd you come up with? 15, exactly. 5 goes into 25 3 times. 3 times 5, 15. Simplifying a fraction. We have the fraction 27/36. Now what they're going to tell you that you want to do is divide out the least, or the greatest common factor, better use the right thing, greatest common factor. But really what we just want to do is reduce it down. It doesn't have to be the biggest number right away because we can keep reducing if we need to. We want to look at 27 and 36 and find a number that they're both divisible by. What number divides into both 27 and 36? 9, okay? So I'm going to divide them both by 9. 27 divided by 9 is? 3. 36 divided by 9 is? 4. 3/4 is going to be my answer in lowest terms because I can't divide them both by anything other than 1 now. Everything's divisible by 1. Now, for fun, say you said, oh, I could divide those by 3, right? They're both divisible by 3. 27 divided by 3 is 9. 36 divided by 3 is 12. But if you look at that one, you say, oh, 9 and 12 are both divisible by 3 again. So I could divide it a second time. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. It was a little more work, but as long as you keep going until you can't divide them by anything other than 1, you're going to end up with your fraction in simplest form. Now, when they say in simplest form, they don't mean if it's an improper fraction to write a mixed number. They just mean to reduce it down as much as you can and leave it as a fraction. Here I have 16 over 40. So 16 and 40 are both divisible by, I think I heard someone say 2 by 2. So let's divide by 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 40 divided by 2 is 20. Can I reduce it down some more?
Yes.
Yep, I can divide by 4, okay? 8 divided by 4
2.
is 2. 20 divided by 4 is
5.
5. Can't reduce it down anymore. 2 and 5 don't have any common factors other than 1, 2/5. Again, if you wanted to check that with your calculator, if you have the fraction button, 16 fraction 40ths, if you hit equals, your calculator should say 2/5. So go ahead on your paper and reduce 20/24 down to simplest form. What'd you come up with? 5, 6. Good, that's what I came with too. I could divide them both by 4 right away, and I get 5, 6. $25 says add 3/9 plus 4/9. We'll talk about in algebra, because you'll be getting into algebra, that you can only add like terms. Same thing applies with fraction. You can only add fractions with like denominators. Because if I try to add thirds with fifths, we're not talking about the same units. If I'm going to add fractions, once they have a common denominator, all I'm really doing is adding the numerators, the top numbers. So the top number is called the numerator, the bottom number is called the denominator, and if I'm going to add those, I'm just taking the 3 plus 4 on top and keeping that same denominator. So 3/9 plus 4/9 is just going to give me 7/9. Not that you have to write all that work down, but if you just want to remind yourself of what you did, hey. So if I have 8/10 minus 1/10, I'm going to get 7/10, because 8 minus 1 is 7, and tenths are the units I'm working with. 27. Where'd my little slider go? There it is. Oh, come on. Oh, it moved over every direction. 3/5 minus 1/5. 2/5. So I'm going to hop over to Alex. Some of you have worked on Alex before, but others of you have not.
Can I go see if the thing is open?
Sure. You know what you're doing.
Can I go too?
Yep. For those who were here yesterday, you did your pretest. Did you finish your pretest? Mm-hmm. All right, good.
I not did too good, but.
We'll talk about that in a second, but not doing good to you might not be the same thing as not doing good to me. I'm skipping the assessment and pretending that I know something. So your pie chart came up with something that looked like this. It told you to click continue. It said the dark part were the things you knew, the light part is the things you're going to learn. So pretending I took the assessment, it says I got 42 of 60 in this first section, which is called arithmetic readiness. Thus, when I was naming things, it said AR something. That's because that was arithmetic readiness. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold your cursor over that dark green section and grab your packet that you had for introductory algebra. And you want to look to see if you have any of those first 9 things that we went over. So, writing expressions using exponents. Now, sometimes it will add things after you do a topic, but I did them in order, so if you have it, it should be on top when you look there. This one says I have prime numbers. Prime numbers was one of the things on my list.
So I want to highlight.
So you want to, on your pie chart, do the ones that are on this list first. If you already have those all done because you're ahead of me, then you're going to work on something else. But the first things you want to do are the ones we went over today from this list of 9 things we did. Some of you are going to be ahead of me. I will get caught up to you faster than you realize.
She said she's not open till tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah,
You got to be kidding me.
I'm serious, she's sick. I just asked.
I'll be going up to the VPAA's office in a minute. Okay. So, for those of you who have or have not worked on Alex before, just to go over some of these things on here. The help is a help on how to put your answers in. So you had a little tutorial on how to draw a graph. If you got to the graphing section and you forgot how to get the graph on there, that's what that help is for. It's not a help on the problems. The worksheet. The worksheets were designed for people who don't have computers at home. How many of you have computers at home? Just one? Two people have computers at home? The worksheets are designed so that you can take home extra paper, pencil practice things to do if you would choose to do them. You don't have to do them, but if you do them, you can put them in your notes and use them as your notes when you do your assessment. If you do not have a computer, you will want to plan on spending extra time outside of class time working on your pie chart, or you'll never get to the 90 hours that's expected out of you. So in theory, for a college class, for every hour and a half you're in class, you should be spending an hour and a half outside of class doing your homework. Inbox. That is the Alex Message Center. You also had an email they had you type in, whether you use your school email or Hotmail email. When I send a message to you, it'll go both in on Alex and forward it to whatever other email you have. Usually on Sundays, I will send you an email and say, the goal for this week is, well, the goal for this week is to put in 6 hours of work and to have at least a 15% on your pie chart. I'll tell you in a minute how you check that.
Where did you find that?
Up here where it says inbox.
Okay.
Now I'm going to click done on that for a second. And I'm going to show you another nice feature of the inbox once I get to a topic here. So if I would go to prime numbers and say I'm working at home and I'm stuck on something, if I go to the explain, it's going to give me an explanation. It has the Alex explanation. It also over here says Linda's notes AR27. If you happen to look at your packet next to prime numbers, guess what? It has AR27. So there's a couple places you can get to my notes. One is under the explain. There's also one that says resources. So if you get stuck on something and you want to see what I typed up for notes, you can do that. Here's Alex's notes. Here's Linda's notes, which comes up as a Word document so that you can print them out nice. And so I just added maybe a little bit more explanation than they had, where I've listed all the factors out and said, okay, is it prime, is it not prime, etc. So those are there if you want to use them. Did I lose where I was at? No, I didn't.
You lost me.
So I'm on a different thing than you because you may, I don't know if you have prime numbers or not, but I just picked a topic. So usually the first thing you do, I'm going to go back out to the pie, is you look here on your pie chart. Hopefully if it's something we went over in class, you know how to do it. But maybe you're ahead of me. Maybe you're already on fractional part of a circle. You can go to explain, and that's going to tell you how to do the problem. You can also click on my notes to get another example. Now if you look at those notes and you still just really don't get it, if you go up to the inbox and click compose, and then you have to click 2, you have some choices. One is to send a message to one of your fellow students. Another one is to send a message to me. They think I'm Professor Flannery. I'm really just Linda, but they think I'm Professor Flannery because I teach at a college. Or if it was a technical issue, you could also send a message to customer support. But you would say you want to send a message to me, and then notice way down underneath here, there's a spot that says attach page. Because I came from the explain page of a question, you can attach that so you don't have to type the question back up. You can just attach that and say, I don't get this, or I am having trouble on the third part of this, or whatever your question might be, and that way you don't have to try to type the entire question in. Now if you really did want to type the question in, you can click on these things that say algebra. You probably don't need trig or matrices and introductory algebra. But if you click on those, you've got choices where you could type in things with exponents and fractions and all of that. But it's a whole lot easier just to attach the page and say, oh, I'm stuck on this fractional part of a circle thing. Usually if I type something back, I will type it as a Word document because then you can print it out and it looks a lot nicer. Otherwise, you could just wait till the next class period and ask me about it. But if you want to switch topics, say you're stuck on fractional part of circle, you just click back on my pie and then go back to your pie chart and you can pick out a different topic to work on. Your report. You probably want to look at your report weekly. We said the goal each week was to put in how many hours? 6 rows. 6 hours a week. We will have about 4 hours of class. Actually, we have more than 4 hours of class, but I talk part of the time. Right now it says I've spent 18 minutes on Alex. Those of you who were here yesterday and took your pretest, maybe you have closer to an hour on Alex. But your goal is to put in about 6 hours a week. We said the goal for the first week was to be 15% done. So what I'm going to do is scroll down to the bottom. And I skipped the assessment, so it says skipped assessment, but yours probably says initial assessment or something like that. And in the blue is what you did on your assessment. Mine says 24%. So even though I said the goal was 15%, if I was at a 24%, that doesn't mean I don't think you should work this week. It just means you're ahead of me. If you've worked it all on your pie chart, you will see green after that. So you'll take the blue plus the green for the week to see where you're at. Once you put in about 10 hours of work, it's going to give you another assessment. That bar will show up above there. So you're always going to look at the top bar and you're going to look under course mastery. You also have one that says current objective. That's the chapter we're on. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the course. So 15% is your goal for this week. Some of you are probably already past 15% when you took the pretest because you already knew some stuff. So more power to you. Doesn't mean I don't want you to work. The beginning stuff obviously is going to be a lot easier. Right now we're just basically reviewing some basic math things you need to do algebra. Once you get into factoring, that's going to be a lot harder. It's probably going to take you more than 6 hours to learn the factoring, where this probably took you a half hour maybe to learn. So the average is 6 hours a week. If you don't put in 6 hours this week, but you put in 4 hours, and next week you put in 10 hours, and it averages out to that, more power to you. Your goal is 90 hours. If you finish early, you'll be really happy. You won't be happy if you get to the end of the semester and only have 45 hours in and are at a 70% and don't pass the class, however. I don't think you'll be happy if you don't pass the class anyway. If I close my report and I click done, you will see right now that there's some sections that have little white dots in them. That's the chapter we're currently on. So right now on your pie chart, it's only going to let you work in this dark green section and this whatever teal blue colored section. I'm going to do everything I can in this section first, then I'll go down to these things down here. And so right now it says in 12 days we want to have how many ever topics done. Since I'm probably ahead, it only says I have 16 left to do. Yours will say whatever the number is, maybe more, maybe less than that, but that's going to give you somewhat of an idea. If you finish those topics before that 12 days, it's going to open the next chapter. Once the next chapter opens up, it likes to close the previous chapter. You may have to remind me to say, I didn't finish the review chapter, can you open that back up? Yes, I can. So if you don't finish on time, and you have a few more problems that you need to do, just let me know so I can open it back up so you can finish what you need to finish. Because sometimes you're sick or whatever happens and you don't get done by the time I'd like you to get done. Under, that's the next thing up there, options. The only real important thing or so under the options is there's going to be this thing that says ask a friend. What that is if somebody in class is having trouble with a topic, one of the options is, do you want to ask a friend? If Rose has already mastered it, her name will come up as somebody you can ask for help. So, if you don't mind being a friend to your fellow students, put a little check mark in that box so that if I'm really busy and Rose needs help with something, she can ask a friend and see who else in class has already done it. And that way, maybe she can run over and ask you for help quick. So, if
You're checking that box, right?
I suppose.
I just like to
I
pick
got
on
you
Rose.
guys. I'll help y'all out.
The resources, like I said, if you want to quickly go to my note sheets without having to go through the explain. Some people don't like to click on explain because they think they'll have to do 1 or 2 extra practice problems. They are numbered the same way they are on the packet. So if you look at the front of the packet, you should be able to, my student worker who loaded them in there, put them in a crazy order. You may have to search for them, but they're all there. Sometimes they'll have a topic that they split up. I don't see any on this packet yet, but you may see one that says AR10A and AR10B. I don't have 2 separate note sheets for those because they just changed them on me. But you should be able to find the note sheets under there if you want to print my note sheets under the resources. The exit, you don't really need to use the exit. You can just close the internet window when you're done. This is coming out of California, and basically their server saves everything you do as you go. And I can see the same reports that you can see, so I can click and see how many hours you worked, how many topics you worked on, if you mastered them or not. I can even click to see what questions you did and all kinds of stuff. So if you logged on for 3 hours and only did 1 topic, I'm going to be a little nervous. Otherwise, it's one you're really stuck on. MyPie, that's the one you'll be clicking on most of the time to get to your work. The review. A lot of times when you log in, it'll pop up to the review and it'll say, these are the last 3 topics that you worked on 2 days ago. Do you want to review them? If you do, click on the name of that topic. If you don't, click back on MyPie, and that will take you out so that you can get to new stuff. Otherwise, if you intentionally go to review, say it's midterm and you said, I forgot how to do prime factorization, then you can go look to find prime factorization on this list, wherever it may be. I don't have it yet because I still have prime numbers. But you can find it on here, and you can do some extra practice problems before you have to take the midterm. I'm going to hit done. The dictionary. You can go directly to the dictionary, but mainly probably you'll use it when you're on a question. So like here where you see the prime numbers in green, if you click on that, it's going to take you into the dictionary that has the explanation of what prime numbers are. In order to print those, you have to right-click, and then you'll have the option to print. They don't have a nice print button over to the side like some things do. Sometimes the dictionary is pretty good. Sometimes the dictionary was written by some math geek who goes way farther into it than you really want to know. But it's there if you want to look up what a word means or what an integer is or whatever it might be. Calculator, you can see that the calculator is not always active. I'm not going to stand behind you when you take the assessment and say, the calculator's not active, you can't use it on that problem. But I will warn you that you do need to know how to add 1/2 plus 2/3 without your calculator, because once you get farther into algebra and you have 2a over 5b plus 6a over 7b, you're going to have to understand the concept of making equivalent fractions and how you add fractions. And if you can't do it without your calculator, you're not going to be able to do them with the variables in there. So you need to understand the process. My suggestion is, if the calculator is not active, do it paper pencil on your paper, check it with your calculator. And as we go through the note sheets, I'll talk about how you can use that fraction button and how you can check your answers. I don't want that to be the only way you're doing your problem, but I'm not going to stop you if that's what you do. You have to live with what you're going to learn. Assignments. You're going to have 2 assignments over the course of the semester, the midterm and the final. I will schedule those. When they pop up, you'll see a big yellow star over the top, and then I'll put a password in so that you can do those. The ebook is an optional thing. It costs extra money. I did not have you purchase the ebook because I found that most students never used it anyway. They got by fine with coming to class and using my notes. But if you want to spend money to buy a book, you could buy the ebook instead of a real textbook. Grade book I'm not going to use because basically your grade is coming at the end of the semester. At midterm, I'll say you're approximately here, but you're basically going to have 3 possible grades. 90% or above on your final is passing. That means your final plus any bonuses that you have. 45 hours, although I really don't think that's satisfactory, is what the school has decided is satisfactory progress. 45 hours is what you have to have your hours of class. Should also have 45 hours of homework. So if you don't finish the class but you put in 45 hours, you get an S for your grade, which looks nicer than an F. And the other grade that nobody wants. That means you didn't really put in the effort that you should have to pass the class, so we're just going to give you the F. Call it good. The calendar basically is right now my guess of when we're going to have things done by. I will probably change those dates as we go. We might have a snow day, or we might just get behind for whatever reason. And so those are those estimated dates where it says, oh, you've got 12 days to finish that, is what I guessed. I will change them as we go to fit where we're at on the note sheets. Questions on kind of getting around on Alex? The main thing you're going to do is just go to My Pie, go to the section we're working in, and look to see, are any of these the ones we covered today? If they are, I'm going to do those first. If you don't have any of those, you just pick a new topic to work on and work ahead of me. It's fine. It's okay to work ahead of me. Alrighty. I'm going to see if I can't find out how we can get you some books.